Well, here we are again, November 2024.
Feels a little like deja vu, doesn't it?
It does, right? Donald Trump is back as president-elect. And, the news is already buzzing about his cabinet picks. We've got articles, analyses, even a little bit of SpaceX news sprinkled in.
That SpaceX thing, that's a real head-scratcher, isn't it?
It is. It's like classic Trump. So, ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
Let's figure out, what these picks say about Trump's priorities.
Yeah.
What kind of impact they could have.
The thing that's really grabbing everyone's attention, I think, is how unconventional some of these choices are.
Yeah.
We're seeing like this mix of people from his inner circle and then like some names that seem to have come out of left field.
Yeah, like Dr. Oz as the possible, head of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I mean, everyone knows Dr. Oz from TV.
Right.
But running a massive healthcare program.
It's a different beast.
Totally different.
Absolutely.
And then you've got Linda McMahon, former CEO of WWE, as a possibility for education secretary.
Yeah. It's definitely raising eyebrows.
It's like, what? Yeah.
And then, we can't forget probably the most maybe controversial of them all.
Yeah?
Matt Gaetz as a potential attorney general.
That's a big one.
It's huge. Right. Okay, let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, what kind of experience like someone like Dr. Oz even have for a role like that?
Well, I mean, you look at his background, it's mainly cardiothoracic surgery, television personality, right?
Right.
So in terms of healthcare administration experience, pretty limited, to say the least.
Yeah.
I think this maybe signals a move towards a more consumer-driven approach to healthcare.
Okay.
Maybe like more emphasis on individual choice. Maybe even like, tiered healthcare plans, kind of like, you pick your cell phone plan.
Yeah. So you're saying like instead of a one-size-fits-all kind of approach to healthcare, we might see like different levels of coverage, different costs, depending on what people choose.
Exactly.
That could really change things. I mean, that could completely reshape healthcare access, affordability, the whole landscape.
Wow.
And it would definitely appeal to a certain part of the electorate.
Right.
Which,
It's a strategic move.
it could be a very strategic move on his part.
And then you've got Linda McMahon and education.
Yeah.
That's another one where it's like...
It's a head-scratcher for sure.
It's like,
Yeah.
what's going on there?
Well, her background is primarily in business entertainment, WWE.
Right.
Now, sure, she's got experience with, large organizations, marketing, that kind of thing.
Right.
Which I guess you could say translates to managing a sprawling education system.
I guess so, yeah.
But, like, her stance on actual education policy,
Right.
like, what's her vision for the Department of Education? That's still a big question mark.
It's a big unknown.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then, the Matt Gaetz situation.
Yeah.
Which seems to be just, like, creating so much buzz and controversy.
Generating a lot of noise for sure.
What makes this appointment so contentious, you think?
Well, I mean, you've got the fact that he's a controversial figure to begin with.
Right.
And then on top of that, you layer in this recent leak of damaging testimony
Oh, right.
from that ethics investigation.
Yeah.
And it adds fuel to the fire.
It is a mess.
It really is. It's a complicated situation. And it's just like, stoking that fire of political division.
All right. It feels like an appointment like that would just further polarize,
Absolutely.
an already deeply divided nation.
For sure.
So is this just about Trump fulfilling campaign promises? Or is there like a deeper strategy here?
Hard to say for certain.
Yeah.
But, I think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
The fact that these appointments, they're not just about like filling positions.
Right.
They're sending a message, right?
Yeah.
It's about his leadership style, his vision for the country.
Right, like putting Dr. Oz in charge of healthcare.
Exactly.
That's like a really strong signal.
It sends a very specific signal to a very specific part of the electorate.
Right, right.
And it could have huge implications for healthcare policy.
Huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with Gaetz, I mean, if that goes through, it might signal that Trump is like doubling down on his base, prioritizing loyalty, maybe over, broader appeal.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It's definitely a gamble.
So we've got these like unconventional picks, potentially huge implications. But then in the middle of all this political drama, we have Trump attending like the SpaceX Starship test launch.
It's so strange.
It's with Elon Musk, right? It's like this weird collision of politics and space travel.
It's very only in a Trump presidency, isn't it?
Yeah, it just seems so Trump,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
It does.
It really does. But, it also could be a hint, right?
Okay.
Maybe a renewed focus on that private space industry.
Oh, interesting.
In his second term.
So maybe space exploration and the role of companies like SpaceX, that could be a bigger part of his agenda this time around.
It's possible. I mean, we know from his first term, he's not afraid to shake things up.
Right.
And the space industry, that could be ripe for some disruption,
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially if he pushes for, deregulation.
Oh, for sure.
To try and boost American dominance in space.
Exactly. And deregulation. We know Trump loves deregulation.
He does.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Okay, so we've got potential cabinet picks signaling this, really specific vision for healthcare, education, maybe even space exploration.
Yeah.
And, of course, the controversial Gates pick.
Right.
This is painting, a very interesting picture.
It is.
Of what a second Trump term might look like.
A very interesting picture indeed.
But let's not forget about the current administration.
Oh, right.
We also have this news about Biden requesting $100 billion in disaster aid.
Which includes funding for that collapsed Baltimore bridge.
Right. It's like a reminder that while Trump's out there, watching rockets, the Biden administration is still dealing with real-world problems.
Absolutely. It really highlights, the continuity of government, even amidst a transition, right?
Right.
And it also kind of underscores the complexity of, governance itself.
Yeah.
While one administration is preparing to take over, the other one is still grappling with, ongoing crises and needs, right?
Almost like two different realities playing out at the same time.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it raises this important question, I think, for all of us, what can we reasonably expect?
Yeah.
About the direction of a second Trump term. Based on these early signs, what will this mean for you, personally, or for whatever area you're most interested in?
Now, let's dig a little deeper into one of the most maybe contentious appointments.
Okay.
This potential nomination of Matt Gaetz as Attorney General.
Right.
This one's causing a lot of stir.
It really is. Yeah, it's a controversial pick, for sure. And, what makes this situation especially, I guess, fascinating is that we have this leak, right?
Right.
Of this damaging testimony about Gaetz from this ethics investigation.
Oh, wow.
So it adds another layer to this.
Yeah, it's not just that he's controversial.
Right, exactly.
It's that there's this cloud of suspicion hanging over him. But there are still those who support him.
Oh, absolutely. And it really, it highlights that divide, right? The political divide.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder of how divided we are as a nation, for sure.
It is. And, those divisions become even more apparent when you look at Trump's stance on immigration.
Okay.
Particularly his intention to use the military for mass deportations.
Really?
Yeah, and he's even used the phrase shock and awe to describe, his approach.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is. It is. So how does that compare, I guess, to deportation numbers under previous administration?
Yeah. Yeah, what are we talking about here?
Right, right. So we've got data on deportations under Obama, Biden, and Trump's first term.
Okay.
Under Obama, deportations peaked at about 400,000 annually.
Okay.
Under Biden, they were way lower.
Right.
During Trump's first term, somewhere in between.
Okay, so where does this shock and awe approach fit in? Are we talking bigger numbers than we've seen before?
I think that's the implication.
Wow.
And, his pick for border czar, Tom Homan, he's known for his hardline stance on immigration. So it seems likely that Trump is aiming for a significant increase in deportations.
Wow, that raises some serious questions, I think.
It does.
Logistically, how do you even carry out deportations on that scale?
Right.
And what about the ethical considerations,
Absolutely.
This isn't just numbers. We're talking about people's lives here.
You're absolutely right. It's crucial to consider the human impact, for sure.
Yeah.
And, the economic and social consequences. Those are huge unknowns.
Yeah.
What would the impact be on families, communities,
right,
the economy as a whole? These are questions that I think we need to be asking.
This all feels very heavy, to be honest.
It is a lot.
It's easy to get, wrapped up in the political maneuvering, the headlines.
Right.
But we can't lose sight of, the real world implications.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to remember, we're not just passive observers in this.
Right.
We have a voice and a responsibility, I think, to engage in these conversations and hold our leaders accountable.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears for a second. Talk about something a little less, heavy.
Sure.
Remember that SpaceX thing?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What do you think about Trump being at that Starship test launch?
It's interesting, isn't it?
Is.
I think it's definitely more than just a publicity stunt.
Okay.
Remember, Trump was already, interested in space during his first term.
Oh, right.
He established the Space Force, remember?
Yeah.
So this could be like a renewed push, right?
Okay.
For American dominance in space with maybe a specific focus on the role of private companies like SpaceX.
So we could be looking at a sort of public-private partnership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe a more kind of aggressive approach overall.
Okay.
If Trump sees a chance to assert American leadership in space, he might be willing to take more risks.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And what about that deregulation angle we talked about?
Oh, right, yeah.
Could that play a part here?
Yeah, I mean, it could.
I think so. Streamlining those regulations for companies like SpaceX,
Right.
that could be a key piece of his strategy if he wants to see
Right.
rapid advancements,
Right. Okay, so we've got this potential shift in space policy.
Yeah.
But then you also have Biden requesting $100 billion in disaster aid.
Right, it's like back down to earth.
Yeah, including funding for that collapsed Baltimore Bridge.
It is a reminder that there are real problems here
Right.
that need attention.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that, while one administration's focusing on the future, the other one's, grappling with the immediate needs
Right, exactly.
of its citizens.
It's a real balancing act.
Yeah.
And it kind of underscores the fact that these aren't just abstract political ideas, right?
Right.
They have real effects on people's lives.
Right.
The collapse of that bridge, that has had a devastating impact on people.
Absolutely. Okay, let's circle back for a minute to Dr. Oz.
Right.
And the potential implications of his appointment to lead, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Yeah, that's another one with major potential consequences.
Right, because, he's a well-known figure, Dr. Oz, but his qualifications for this specific role have been questioned.
Right, and how might his approach differ?
Yeah.
From what we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
You mentioned the consumer-driven approach earlier.
Yeah.
So that could mean more choice for people when it comes to their plans.
Yeah.
But it could also lead to, greater disparities.
Right.
Access and affordability.
Right. So some people benefit.
Right.
Some people really struggle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So imagine choosing your healthcare plan becomes like choosing your cell phone plan.
Whoa.
You have different tiers, different options, different costs.
Okay.
It sounds appealing.
It does. Yeah.
On the surface.
Right.
But it could be a real game changer.
Right.
Not necessarily in a good way for everyone.
And we can't forget, the political calculations behind all this.
Oh, absolutely not.
Right. Dr. Oz is a charismatic figure. He's got a big following.
Huge following.
So this appointment, it could be a very strategic move.
Absolutely.
To appeal to a certain part of the electorate.
Absolutely. And there's that political dimension to every cabinet appointment, right?
Right.
It's not just about finding the most qualified person. It's about building a team that aligns with your vision and your priorities.
Okay, so we've got these potential cabinet picks.
Yeah.
Potentially huge implications for healthcare, immigration, even space exploration.
It's a lot.
We've also got the Biden administration still working. The reminder that real-world problems they don't just disappear.
No, they don't.
With a change in leadership.
They stick around.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. And remember, we're still very early in Trump's transition back into power. So the choices he makes now, they really set the tone for his whole term. We need to pay close attention to how these appointments actually develop and what actions are taken.
So we're left with a lot of questions,
a
lot of uncertainty.
For sure.
And a sense that we're in for a pretty wild ride.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're standing at a crossroads.
It does.
A second Trump term, it could bring some major changes.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's up to all of us to stay informed, engaged, so we can, kind of navigate what's coming next.
Yep.
Exactly. It's easy to get overwhelmed, right?
It is.
With all the information, all the noise, especially when it comes to politics.
It is, for sure.
But, I think that's why these deep dives are so important.
Yeah.
We can, cut through the noise, connect the dots.
Right.
And really understand the potential impact.
And it's not even just about understanding, what's happening. It's about thinking critically about it all.
Absolutely.
Challenge assumptions. Ask the tough questions. Hold our leaders accountable. Take these cabinet picks, for example, right?
Yeah.
We can't just take them at face value.
Right.
We have to ask, what are the implications?
Yeah.
What message is he sending?
Right.
How will they affect, like, the balance of power within the administration?
Right, right. And what about this approach to immigration,
Yeah.
What are the practical, the ethical considerations
Right.
of using the military for mass deportations? How will that affect families and communities?
Yeah.
The economy. Like, these are questions we can't shy away from.
Absolutely not. And remember, this is all happening while, Biden's still working.
Right.
His request for disaster aid, the funding for that collapsed bridge in Baltimore.
Right.
It highlights those very real challenges that the nation is facing right now.
It does.
And they won't disappear.
They don't.
With a new administration.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
To process. But I think, a key takeaway here is that we're not just passive observers,
Right.
We have a role to play in shaping the future.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, but only if we apply it.
Right.
We need to take what we've learned,
right,
engage in those conversations, challenge those assumptions,
yes,
and hold our leaders accountable.
So let's bring it back to you, the listener, as we wrap up this deep dive. Think about, what you've learned, how it relates to your own life, your community, your interests.
What are the impacts of a second Trump term for you personally?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, something to really think about.
Will his policies affect, like, your job, your health care, your community? How might his approach to immigration, to space exploration, like, how's that going to impact the future that you're envisioning?
These are big questions.
Yeah.
With big implications.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From these controversial cabinet picks to the SpaceX connection, from immigration policy to the work that the Biden administration is still doing.
Right.
It's a lot to unpack, but hopefully you've gained some insights into what a second Trump term might look like.
And more importantly, we hope you're leaving with, like, a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
A desire to learn more.
Absolutely.
And a renewed commitment to really engaging in the conversations that are shaping our future.
Because remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us, right?
No.
It's something that we create together. Stay engaged.
And keep those critical thinking caps on.
For sure.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive for this